I don't know about you guys, but I've been spending the last few years basking in HD 2D glory. Titles like Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, and Live Alive have totally resurrected my love for old school RPGs. The style is pleasing to me in every way, and I'm so ecstatic it's catching on so well. But one HD 2D game eluded my radar until only recently. That game is Wandering Sword, an upcoming RPG inspired by ancient China. I first watched 2 trailers for the game, which is set for a release of 2023 on Steam. And I just have to say that my first impressions were so strong that I knew I had to give the demo a try and make a video on it. For the sake of full transparency, I'm not being paid by the game's publisher to make this video, but they did give me a key to play the demo. So that's what I've done. And right off the bat, I have to tell you how incredible these visuals are. When I first saw it, I thought I was actually watching the product of a huge development studio. The vivid colors, classic character sprites, and complex animations work so well with the environmental backgrounds, and the light effects and shading make every area I've seen look amazing. They also use color to show you different scenes during different times of the day, and it really makes everything look so unique even with the same Chinese motif. Daytime, sundown, and nighttime are all covered in various scenes, and you truly notice it as the story progresses. The blur effects in the background and focus sprites in the foreground really provide a great sense of depth too. I also liked how character portraits were incorporated into the dialogue. This was a nice touch that reminded me of Grandia, Lunar, and the other RPGs that did this effectively. I've noticed that some of them are reused for several NPCs, but I don't think this is done for any of the primary characters. The art for the portraits themselves is absolutely fantastic, and definitely in an Asian style that fits the theme. This game straight up looks like Octopath Traveler and ancient Chinese history had a baby, and I love the result. Wandering Sword takes place in the late Zhou dynasty, when China was plagued with internal and external conflicts. A group called the Tianlong Gang harasses the people and maintains a stranglehold over the region, but often feuds with rival bandit groups. You play as a young man from the Outer Lands named Yuan Yi, who is caught up in the middle of it along with his friends. His life is saved due to the surprise intervention of a martial arts master, but he is poisoned in the process and passes out. As the game begins, Yuan must seek out a remedy for the affliction, learn martial arts techniques to protect himself, and find his way in a world full of violence. In the 3 hours of the demo, you're introduced to a lot of characters. Many of them leave the picture soon after entering it, but I'm counting on the final product to emphasize more character development over time. Combat takes place on a tiled 2D grid, where each character can move a set number of squares and execute one action per turn. You can choose between real-time or turn-based mode. So yeah, at the risk of being called a boomer, I chose the latter because that's the style I prefer. In addition to a normal attack, each character has several martial arts techniques that need to be activated through a menu to be used in battle. The battles rely on a really innovative cooldown system where if you use a special ability, you can't use it again for a certain number of turns. This made me stop to think about when it was best to use these, so I could maximize my damage against multiple enemies if I could, and conserve my magic points if I couldn't. All of your techniques are based upon weapon types, so there's swords, sabers, polearms, and hidden weapons, which appear to me to be gloves. Combat yields martial points, which can be allocated to upgrade your individual martial arts abilities in the menu. In addition, you also gain meridian points over time that can be spent on grids that raise your stats progressively. But you don't gain experience points. That's right, there's no traditional leveling here, so these two mechanics serve as the advancement system. If I was to relate this to other RPGs, the system kind of combines Star Ocean's skills framework with Final Fantasy X's sphere grid. Also, many of the gear pieces provide things like hit point bonuses, so you do progress that way as well. I guess you could say the world of Wandering Sword is your martial arts oyster. The game's inventory management reminds me a lot more of the Diablo games than it does typical RPGs, as all items have a graphical icon. New weapons and armor can easily be equipped by double-clicking on them, and I found it extremely easy to manage. There's even a convenient hover over effect that shows you the stats and effects of everything, and I never had space issues. If you aren't constantly equipping the new weapons and armor you find though, you can really get outmatched by the enemies. Wandering Sword also features an affinity system where you can give specific items to NPCs to gain something in return, and this is the basis for many of the game's quests. For instance, to progress through one area, I had to raise my affinity level with a particular NPC so that he would duel me. The quest system seems pretty huge here, and there's definitely a lot of collection and item deliveries you can do for bonus items outside of the main storyline. The world map is beautiful and looks extremely huge, and there's even NPCs that walk through it you can stop and interact with. There are some areas you're not allowed to wander to in the demo, but you're actually able to see a lot for what this is. You can go into 3 separate villages and 2 other areas besides that. I had a lot of fun just running around in the streets, taking in the awesome visuals, and interacting with NPCs. And then we have the soundtrack, the part that probably blew me away the most. I really enjoyed how distinct it is because it truly adopts a classical Chinese style that isn't incorporated into any other RPG I can remember. Well, except Destiny of an Emperor on the NES, I guess. But the quality of these tunes is very high, and you really get a relaxing vibe from them. Most of them make you feel like you're in a calm, meditative trance without any of the world's troubles to affect you at all. Until you're forced into an unexpected fight with bandits, that is. So yeah, when that happens, you get the battle music, and that's a lot more upbeat compared to these traditional Chinese tunes. But I really have to say, I think the contrast works pretty well though. And since bandits fight bandits fighting other bandits in Wandering Sword, you'll be hearing a lot of the combat theme. I do have a few critiques though, and the first one is nitpicky. Some of the dialogue text blends in with the character portraits and looks a bit odd as a result. I only noticed this with Yu and Yi's lines, but it did happen quite a bit. If I had any say in it, the text itself would be a bit bigger in general too. I also found some other minor bugs, like a string of untranslated Chinese text and one odd sound loop that seemed like a bug. I reported both of these things to my publisher contact and hopefully they'll be cleaned up. Lastly, I wish there was more than one combat theme on the soundtrack. Now don't get me wrong, it's a great track, but I think this game could benefit from a distinct boss encounter song as well. So yeah, consider me extremely impressed with Wandering Sword. It looks like an Asian-inspired Octopath Traveler, but definitely has its own distinct flavor, especially in terms of combat. The menu interface and inventory systems are extremely impressive and easy to use. The hover over effects are very intuitive and beyond anything I've ever seen in an RPG like this. And the martial art advancement system is a lot of fun too. But I think the best parts of Wandering Sword are the setting, thematical flavor, and combat system, which are all totally unique. I just don't think most RPG fans come across a title like this very often. The developers really did a fine job of putting so much emphasis on graphical presentation, because you could easily mistake the quality for Octopath Travelers. So I am absolutely looking forward to the final product, and I can't wait to play it. So what do you think about Wandering Sword? Does this look like an RPG you'd be interested in playing? Let me know in a comment below. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more retro gaming content. If you want early access to the videos I produce and other perks, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon patron or via the YouTube Join feature.